Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fourmation Podcast. This is our third episode of, we're going to say, Series 2, I believe, and our 19th overall. So we are getting through them now. And as we've said in the last 2 weeks, we're very pleased to be back. It is a difficult time at the moment. Of course, we're all still locked down, but we hope that for those of you watching, we've given you a bit of light entertainment maybe, or something to laugh at if you think our opinions are maybe a little bit silly. But yeah, we're back for episode 3 of this one. I'm George Wilson and I'm joined by the usual foursome, we're going to say, the usual quartet. So it's me, George, Devon Cash. Devon, how are you doing?
And not too bad. I'm just trying to comprehend what you've just said, but
let's not dwell on that. Sam as well. Sam, you must be in a fairly good mood in fantasy football. You've had a pretty good week, haven't you?
Yeah. Going better than real football for me. That's sort of my escape at the moment from being a Grimsby Town fan, which is something you want to be at the moment.
And we're going to try and touch on that towards the end of the episode. Sam's genius in the double game week on FPL, but that will come later in the day.
Too kind.
And finally, Harry Tizard, Southampton. I know you're a big fan of the FA Cup. You like a cup run, so it must be good to finally be in the fourth round.
Delighted it took longer than expected, but we're there against Arsenal. It's the only competition they really try, and so it's going to be disappointing if we don't go through against them. But we did the minimum expected, and I'm looking forward to this Saturday.
Yeah. So as we said, another episode. There's kind of going to be a bit of a focus today on a few Premier League teams who are in a bit of bother, in a lot of trouble. But we will get onto that. Before we get to that point, we gave it the big build-up in episode 18, as did Scott.
Everyone did.
Sky were on about on about it for all of last week. Liverpool against Man United, the big clash. They've never been close to. They've never been these title rivals before, or haven't been for a long time. They faced off at Anfield on Sunday, and you'd have to say the scoreline was a bit of an anticlimax. If you haven't seen it, then what are you doing? But if you haven't seen it, it finished 0-0. So no goals. Straight into it then. Devon, do you think it was as drab as some on social media have made out? What were your thoughts on it?
I want to firstly start off. You mentioned Sam's fantasy team points and that kind of genius. What about the prediction? God, 0-0. Predicted it on last time. And that's all I've fought for. Now that's my credibility. It's on my CV already. I don't know. It depends if we're looking at it like from where we like to look at it, more tactic based, seeing how they set up and how they fare against each other. It was quite good just to see the kind of how Manchester United upset Liverpool's rhythm and kind of rode their waves of attack. Liverpool, we've said, became a lot more predictable than they first started. We know what kind of attacks they go on. And Man United played it perfectly. But on the neutral, it probably would be a drab game because I think with the amount of how much it's been talked about, you're expecting goals, we're expecting Bruno Fernandes just controlling play, Pogba coming back into form. You're expecting the front three of Liverpool to be firing left, right, and just everywhere. And I think it was just like a game of chess, but no real ending. I think Man United were expecting Liverpool to make a move, and when they made their move, they went forward and missed a chance. And then when Liverpool hit them on the counter, then they were sloppy with it. So overall, I think it was a good game in terms of like football, the tactical breakdown. But other than that, probably drab for the neutral eye.
Yeah, and you would probably have to say, especially in that second half, Man United had the better opportunities to break that deadlock. Probably the biggest one being Paul Pogba's chance. And I don't know about you, Sam, but I kind of saw that moment as Pogba's chance to repay the 80 million or so that Man United spent on him, but he couldn't break through Alisson in the end.
Yeah, I think it's up for debate how big a chance that was, because you could argue that the angle was closed off a little bit by the defender. So he sort of had one place he could go to beat Alisson. He didn't quite get enough height on the ball to get it past him. So that definitely was a big chance. And although it was 0-0, both teams definitely had their moments. I think Firmino could have had a hat-trick in the first half. He was poor finishing wise. And obviously Fernandes, in my opinion, his chance was bigger than Paul Pogba's, because he was a bit closer in as well. So yeah, it was 0-0, third 0-0 between these two teams in 5 seasons at Anfield. So we're not new to them. Obviously, it happens a lot in these sort of games. The cagey performances, neither team wants to lose and create a gap between the other teams. So it was still at its moments, the game. I think it wasn't the worst 0-0 I've seen, that's for sure.
Liverpool, in an attacking sense, have definitely been misfiring of late. I think it's now the last 3 that they haven't scored a goal in. They couldn't break through your Southampton defence, Harry, and Big Fraser Forster in goal. But particularly in this game against Man United, do you think they could have done with a fit and firing Diogo Jota, who looked so sharp at the start of the season, kind of just to vary it up? Do you think the current 3 are kind of losing ideas in a way?
I think they are lacking someone with that clinical edge. I'm looking at the statistics here. They had 17 shots, only 3 on target. They've not scored in 3 games. And, don't get me wrong, Manchester United, a great side, but against Newcastle, against Southampton, and only scoring 1 against West Bromwich Albion, we forget as well. They do seem like they're lacking something, and it's sort of difficult to pinpoint what that exact thing is because of how good Mane, Firmino and Salah have been in the previous seasons. But yeah, just something new, something fresh. They tried it with Shaqiri. I know he plays more of a midfield role, and he was okay in spells, but he had a lot of shots from outside the box that sailed well over. So they need a fresh face. I don't think they're going to bring one in, so they're going to have to find it within their own ranks, and whether they do that or not, it's still up for debate.
It's probably a bit of burnout on Liverpool's part. They've been going 100 miles an hour these last 3 or so seasons under Jurgen Klopp, and they've been blowing teams away with their attacking prowess. And this is the 4th season these 3 have been together. So they're sort of just they're going through a transition phase maybe, and they've lost a bit of energy, a bit of enthusiasm to go and score goals.
Would you also say they got not found out, because that's probably a harsh way to put it, but Mane and Salah especially have been quite quiet in the last few games? Do you think that's because of the burnout, or do you think people know, right, Salah's always going to cut on in his left, Mane likes driving down the line a lot of the time? Do you think their defenders are getting used to their patterns?
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot of material on them. Like these 3 players are always playing; they're rarely injured. So I think all the teams in the league have had a lot of time now to sort of figure out their patterns, their styles, and maybe they've been found out a little bit. But again, you don't want to overreact too much because it's still half the season to go, and Liverpool are still right up there. So we'll see.
I don't think it's overall as well, just the front 3. I think everywhere's become a little bit predictable. I mean, I think we saw in the first few minutes where Robertson was played through, and instead of drilling it across, he had a shot, and he's done that quite a few. His angles either go straight for the front post, win a corner, or cut it back towards the edge of the area, and that's just been the same. I think Trent Alexander-Arnold's been he's been fantastic in the past, but he's just not really set the world alight this year. I think the only change and noticeable one has been Thiago's influence in midfield in recycling play, but he's been playing as a number 8, obviously, and I think where they're lacking is probably a proper number 10. That is going to be not a bit like what De Bruyne is to Man City, someone that's going to score, someone that was like Coutinho's presence there. They probably need to get someone like that to just add a little bit more of a creative spark just in front, just behind that front 3.
Yeah, and we mentioned Salah's problems. He needs to start showing, especially for my fantasy team. It's been a frustrating one in the last couple of weeks. And I've still got my captain on him for this double game week. At the time of recording this, at the time this goes out, rather, he'll be about to play Burnley. So a hat trick would be nice. Thanks, Mo. Well, I should say before
Cheers,
moving on.
God, that's just like the Sonny situation. That
these two teams will face off again this coming weekend in the FA Cup 4th round. That one's going to be at Old Trafford. But I think it's likely that the two teams that play in that game, or the two starting 11s, will be very different from the one that played in the league game, because FA Cup never seems to be much of a priority for either team. But moving on, as I say, and we're going to focus on Newcastle United, first of all, as one of our teams who look to be in a bit of trouble. Still managed by Steve Bruce, of course. They're currently on a 7-game winless run in the Premier League. And they've actually only scored 1 goal in their last 7 in all competitions. That one was actually scored by Big Andy Carroll. And you'd have to say it was a consolation against Leicester too. They're 7 points clear of Fulham at the moment, who are in the last relegation spot, 18th. So, Devon, given that the run that they're on, they're surely at risk of being dragged in and potentially going down, aren't they?
Isn't this just deja vu? Don't we have this conversation about Newcastle every season currently? Obviously, like you said, they've not won in a total of 9 games in all competitions, with 7 of them being losses. And I think just overall that you just have to think that Bruce's remit at the start of the season was just to stay up, I think, anyway, because the lack of ambition shown by Mike Ashley's been prominent for, the last 10 years or so.
Broken record, really.
Yeah, they've just not had any sort of belief. And even before, when Chris Hughton brought good times back to him when they got promoted, then he went, and Rafa's influence as well, and just the excitement that Newcastle had was just outweighed the negatives in a way. Whereas this time, Bruce, obviously Newcastle fan, isn't he? I believe. Left a bigger club in Sheffield Wednesday to go and join Newcastle, but just overall, that I don't think they've got the players to get out of this situation either. They've got a couple of bright sparks in there, but overall the team's negative. I don't think we'll see a positive change, and Newcastle all of a sudden becoming this dynamic team. But if it were to go that way, I think they'll have to get rid of Bruce, because I think the only time Bruce has been semi positive is that when he had the Hull team and the Aston Villa team in the Championship, and that's a completely different ball game to the Premier League.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned there you don't think Bruce is likely to change his ways, and I think that's a fair comment given his previous at many clubs. But in their most recent game at Arsenal, I think he kind of said openly in the press that by starting with 4 attacking players, he is trying to bring that upon themselves. But Sam, do you think they just haven't got the quality in their squad to play in such an expansive manner?
Yeah, I think that goes without saying, to be honest. And I do have a tiny bit of sympathy for him, because Newcastle is a bit of a poison chalice, to be honest. And this is something that the fans of Newcastle have had to experience for a while now, long before Steve Bruce. To talk about Steve McLaren and even Rafa Benitez, you got results, but the football was not attractive still. And it's the same under Bruce. And he, like you said, he went for it at Arsenal with Joelinton, Almiron, Carroll, and Wilson all starting, but they didn't threaten at all. They were toothless in attack still, and were uninspired at the back. So it's tough times for them.
But as you say, Sam, that he has come under a lot of criticism almost since the start from Newcastle fans. Alex Wood, if he's watching from university, He'll love the fact he's got shouted out. He's a Newcastle fan. He's never been too keen. But, Harry, Steve Bruce, it's not like he hasn't been given money to spend. You know, he brought Jamal Lewis, Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser in last summer, the year before, Joe Linton and St. Maximin. So we don't know whether they were all necessarily his choice. I mean, maybe the most recent ones were, but is it time for someone else to come in, do you think?
It's a difficult one. It's for me, it's a bit more difficult than what lays out, due to the fact that they have St. Maximin that's injured. They've got Ryan Fraser that has a suspension, and maybe with the 4-4-2 system that he plays against Arsenal in a few games' time, say he takes Carroll off, put Joe Linton up front, and puts Ryan Fraser on the wing, maybe he might get a bit more luck. You know, against Arsenal, when he says, "I want to change loads of different things and make everything amazing again," not a direct quote, but it's a bit unlucky at the time that he came up against a fantastically solid defensive Arsenal team that kept 4 clean sheets up to that point, and now it's 5 in a row. So it depends who's out there. It really depends who's on their market, and it's all well and good saying, "I want to play this attacking, attractive style of football." But A, who's going to take them over? And B, like Sam said, do they have the players to do that? And it all comes down to, if it was his choice to sign those players, then it's all at his doorstep. It's all his fault. Not all his fault, but partly his fault that all of this is happening. But if it's not his choice, it's sort of difficult. It's a bit of a 50-50 really. But if the results don't go well against Villa, Leeds and Everton that come up next, maybe then they need to roll the dice. It all depends what the league table looks after those 3 games.
They have spent money under Bruce, but for the most part they've been very uninspired signings. £60 million they spent on Joe Linton and Almiron, and what have they done of any notice? Let's be honest. And you know, they had all these takeover links before the season. They went from being linked to Gareth Bale to signing Jeff Hendrick from Burnley. So no disrespect to the man, but they have spent money, like I said, but they haven't been signings that have really improved them as a team. They've just stayed where they are and have even regressed from last season.
I think the takeovers kind of hampered their whole preparation, haven't they? Because I remember we had for our first episode during the podcast, that were the whole Newcastle takeover kind of introduction, whereas 1 year on they're still under Mike Ashley and still negative. I think the signings came very late as well, and they were just really, and no disrespect to you, George, but they were just cherry picking two of the relegation sides from last year in terms of getting, you know, their best players. Ryan Fraser was out the door anyway, and for the last 12 months he's done nothing for Bournemouth after his little, you know, after spitting the dummy out for not letting him go to Arsenal. Other than that, I think they're buying in the wrong areas as well. Obviously they did need a striker, but the defence has only been improved by Jamal Lewis. They need more focus on that back two, I think, as well, and on the right hand side, because Yedlin's just underperformed as well. And I don't know if Kraft gets in as much as anymore, but there's other key areas like the midfield too. You look at Longstaff, you look at Shelvey. There's not really any inspiration in there to kick forward and play a bit more. With like I said before, more dynamic and getting forward. I think Tifo, if anyone watches them on YouTube, they did a nice special on how to make Newcastle an expansive side and how to implement some attacking ones. And I think even the likes of Jacob Murphy's made a little bit of a difference, but obviously there's better options out there.
Well, yeah, someone like Jacob Murphy, I'm not sure we've maybe touched on this on the podcast before, but kind of behind closed doors, he's played for Norwich and Wednesday. And we've kind of said, Devon, that he's not really up to it in the Premier League. He shows a lot of fight, doesn't he? But maybe that kind of sums Newcastle's squad up, that, you know, they have got some players there who are capable of putting up a fight, but ultimately you need the quality too.
With Murphy, he has got that quality in him. It's just, it shows for about 10 minutes of a game, because the rest of it, he'll beat his man. Everyone's on the edge of the seats, and he'll end up just punting the cross into the stands, or he'll trip over his own feet. It's always been that nearly move every time with Murphy. But like we said, he has had a little bit of a positive impact. I think that's just because he's said to be a Newcastle fan again, a bit like Bruce. So he'll probably put that extra 10% in.
Before we came on, I took a quick look at some odds. There are a few bookmakers offering odds on who could take over should Bruce be sacked. Some of the names who are up there, it includes Rafa Benitez, who Bruce replaced. Eddie Howe is up there. Steve Cooper, who's doing a very good job at Swansea, and also Laurent Blanc. And some of those really are quite high profile, I would say. You know, Eddie Howe has been linked with some big clubs before. So are any of those names likely to want to go to Newcastle, do you think? We've talked about it being a poison chalice. So is that likely or not? Sam, what do you think?
I don't know is the honest answer. Like you say, it's a poison chalice at the moment, Newcastle, and they just feel like an empty shell of a club. They've got nothing going on, and that's down to, as we've mentioned, the leadership at the very top with Mike Ashley and Lee Charnley, the managing director. So I don't know who would want to take this on at the moment. There's a really toxic feeling in the fan base once again, and I can sort of sympathise with Newcastle fans at the moment, because watching Newcastle at the moment feels like a punishment, because they're not an exciting team to watch. They offer nothing, so it'll be a big task for whoever wanting to take over.
To be fair, I wouldn't be surprised seeing Eddie Howe. You know, there's a few players in there that he's managed before, looking at Ritchie, looking at Fraser, looking at Wilson. And at Bournemouth, it wasn't a similar job because he started down at League Two with Bournemouth. But there's a lot of, I wouldn't say misfits, and I wouldn't say under quality or low quality players, but there's a lot of half sort of players that at Bournemouth he was able to transfer into really, really good footballers in a system that he likes. So if there's anyone on that list that I'd want to see personally, I'd say Eddie Howe. And if there's any time that Eddie Howe's going to take that step to the next level and go to a big club, this is his opportunity, if it does arise, that is.
I think Cooper's a very good shout, but is he going to leave Swansea? He's building something there, and he's really taken over from where Potter left it. Obviously, both two young coaches that have worked with young players. Is he going to go to Newcastle where, you know, this season it looks highly likely that Swansea are going to kick on and they've learned from the mistakes of dropping off last year? I don't think he'd go into that. I feel like Newcastle have turned into a bit of a retirement home, you know, like a couple of, you just look at Bruce, you look at McLaren, it just feels like managers that have been okay in the past will end up there. You know, like not I can't think of any current managers like that, but if you look in the Championship, players like managers like Monk and Gary Rowett are going to start just getting the odd job here and there, and I feel like the kind of Premier League equivalent will end up at Newcastle.
Yeah, it's certainly a difficult one. I personally quite like Steve Bruce, but I don't really see him having a lot of success there. So that will be an interesting.
That's just your impression, George.
That will be an interesting one to keep an eye on over the coming weeks and months. We're going to move on now to talk about a team who probably haven't had many problems in recent years. It's been a smooth ride until this point. It's Wolverhampton Wanderers. Last weekend, they had their first Black Country derby, first game against their big rivals, West Bromwich Albion, for almost a decade. And they lost it, which was a big shock. Big Sam getting his first win as Albion boss. Harry's given us a smile as a liker of Albion. But yeah, we're going to focus on Wolves and specifically Wolves' struggles without Raul Jimenez. If you weren't aware, the Mexican striker fractured his skull at Arsenal back in December. And they've only won once, Wolves, in the Premier League since he picked up that injury. That's if you exclude the Arsenal game itself. They're currently 10 points clear of 18th place Fulham. And I've actually seen a few Wolves fans, not many, but a few on Twitter, getting a little bit concerned that maybe they could get dragged into a relegation battle. Devon, the way things are going, can you see that potentially becoming a reality or not? Do you think they're too good to be dragged into that?
Let's be right. Look at the side that went down in, was it 2010-11, round about that time? They're miles apart in terms of quality. I feel like it's just, obviously, when you lose your talisman and someone that was just key in how Wolves played, it's obviously going to take an effect. I feel like the problem is that Wolves have not bought somebody that's like for like. Obviously, Fabio Silva's done okay, but he's 18 at the end of the day, and putting that much responsibility on him is going to take a few games to kick in and, you know, actually have the pressure on his shoulders. I think he showed a glimpse of what he could do with his goal on Saturday, but again, he missed quite a few chances. If you just look at the bottom five as such, you've got to be saying that Wolves are probably going to be beating all of them on paper. Obviously, nothing's won on paper, as we've seen in recent weeks and stuff like that, but I think they're just too good to go down. But we've said that before about teams. But I really think that Wolves there'll be a switch, and Wolves will just end up finishing 8th or 7th.
Well, the return date for Jimenez from his fractured skull is still kind of unknown. So it's kind of hard for them to know whether to gamble or not. Sam, do you think they can afford to gamble and stick with Fabio Silva, who has, as Devon has said there, is still raw and still very inexperienced?
It's hard to say because he has had his struggles, that's for sure. But like Devon mentioned, he's still a kid. But they did spend £36 million on him, so they're gonna want to see something from him on the scoring end. And he got that goal against West Brom. It was a very good goal. Showed his strength, his control. And that might be a kickstart for him. Hopefully it will be on Wolves' end, because it's creating chances hasn't been their problem. They had 23 shots against West Brom, but they've just got no one to finish it off. Obviously they've recalled Patrick Petruni as well from loan from Fiorentina, and he had a chance at the end of that West Brom game, a big chance which he missed. So whether they'll go into the market for an emergency backup, so to speak, they might, but I think we'll probably see them stick with Silva and Cutrone until Jimenez comes back.
Harry, there's been a few players, a few strikers specifically, who have been linked with coming in. Diego Costa is one which immediately comes to mind for me, but those links have since seemingly gone away. Is there anyone who you think they should maybe try to pinpoint? Can you think of anyone specifically?
It'll be a difficult one to do because of all the logistics of it, but Batshuayi is not getting a lot of minutes at Crystal Palace, and I'm not saying he's the same striker as Jimenez, but what they're missing is someone that can hold up the ball and lay it off to the dangerous wingers. I'm not saying that Batshuayi would be the perfect solution, but they need someone of the same sort of mould. If Slimani was still available, I know he's not now, maybe that would have been a rogue shout, but just someone that's of that similar ilk to Jimenez. Because looking at their upcoming fixtures, you've got Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Arsenal, Leicester, Saints, Leeds. You know, they're not fixtures that they're gonna go past, and they've only won one since Jimenez left, got injured, and that was against I wouldn't say struggling Chelsea team, but a Chelsea team who are well out of form. So they need someone that's got the same sort of ability, or not ability, bills as Jimenez, even if it's just a short-term loan deal, because they're really, really struggling. And in the Premier League, you can't be that reliant on one player. So I'm not going to say they're going to go down, because I don't think even if he stays out to the end of the season, he will. But you don't want to keep dropping down that table, A, because you'll get less money when it finishes. And in the COVID times, that's going to really hurt you at the end of the season. But B, you know, you don't want to be near the relegation zone, because heads drop and anything can happen.
Devon, have you got anyone in mind who you think they could try and sign?
So I was thinking, what's going to be the kind of, if you're on Football Manager, your search engine, and I'm thinking, what's the common nationality?
Fabio Silva.
Sturridge.
Yes, he's got fantastic potential now. Portuguese is the kind of way forward for them. And I'm thinking in the Championship, and he's an ex-Wednesday player, maybe someone like Lucas João could come in. He's got 14 goals and 5 assists in 18 Championship matches. He's in the form of his life. He's 27, going into his prime. He's only knocked back. He's only done it in the Championship. And 2, this is his longest run without getting injured. And he has had a couple of problems in the past, but I think now he's being utilised as a number 9. He's just flourishing. He takes 2.6 shots per game and makes 1.1 key passes, and it is the kind of link in that. And he's got not the exact build of Jimenez, because where João is built like Jimenez, he's good in the air, he's athletic, he's also, he adds a lot of pace, he's fantastic with the ball at his feet. I think he could be like for replacement, because he just adds, he's got the quality there, and I think he's always been someone that has the potential to go in the Premier League. It's just maybe this would be the right move, because the way that Reading have set up is similar to the way that Wolves like to go forward, and in that Reading setup, João has been absolutely crucial for their promotion, their playoff hopes after last season's disappointment. So I think Lucas João would be my option, but I think that might be because there might be a little percentage that had come to Wednesday's bank that might actually help us get something this window. But his value on transfer market's 4 million, but I reckon 10 million might just get a quick replacement for now, and someone that can also help going forward as well.
Yeah, thinking of Wednesday, I can't blame you at all for that. Finally, then, this is probably the first time that Nuno Espirito Santo has been under any sort of intense pressure since joining Wolves. You think of it, he came in, won promotion, and they've had 2 7th place finishes, I think it is. Sam, are you under any doubt that he is the man still to lead Wolves forward?
I think he is, but there were signs of maybe mental cracks in the West Brom game. I mean, he subbed off Connor Cody, which he's never done, to try and sort of rejig the formation. So maybe there is a sign of the pressure's getting to him a little bit. They always work with a tight squad, Wolves. They've always worked with a small one. And maybe it's sort of catching up for them a little bit, the amount of games that they've played. Obviously, they lost. I mean, we talked about Jimenez, but they lost Diogo Jota as well in the summer, who we've already mentioned, and he was obviously a big loss as well. And they've struggled attacking-wise, but also defensive concentration has been a big thing for them. They've conceded the first goal in each of their last 9 Premier League games, which shows that maybe at the start of games they're not as switched on as they should be. So that's something they also need to change. But I think they should stick with Nuno. He knows this squad best. Obviously, the Portuguese influence as well. They've got a lot of Portugal players, and he would be best to probably handle them.
Yeah, I agree, to be honest. I think they would be mad to sack him, given they're still fairly well clear of the drop. I'm sure they might turn it around in a bit. So we're now going to move on to the third team who are in a bit of trouble. And we should say, before we tell you who it is, that when we initially planned to record this, we do it the day before. This team, we didn't really mention them. We weren't planning on using them. And then they put in, I'm going to say, a shambles of a performance at the King Power. I'm not even a Chelsea fan. I thought it was shambles.
I agree with that.
At the King Power, it is, of course, Chelsea. They lost 2-0 to Leicester. We should say, before we start ripping into Chelsea, Leicester are looking really quite good at the moment. I'm
about to say it's been quite a negative episode.
It has, yeah.
A lot of bashing. But...
Yeah, we will. We just want to make sure you're aware of that. Leicester have been really impressing and are definitely there in the title race. Not that you need us to tell you that, to know that. But yeah, as for Chelsea, they've now won just two of their last 8 league games. They're in 8th position, 5 points off Liverpool in 4th, although Liverpool played 1 game less. So Chelsea are on a terrible run, to be honest, and spent a lot of money in the summer. So my question is, Harry, if any other manager was in charge of this team and they weren't the club's record goal scorer and legend of the club, would they have been sacked by now?
Oh yeah, he's at the bottom of the points per game for Chelsea managers. But they are having a crisis meeting today, I'm pretty sure, after this awful run of form. But of course, not Avram Grant. He's not the owner.
Who's your source, Harry? Who's your source?
I know things. I'm pretty sure. My resident Chelsea fan away from the podcast said that they're having one very soon. So you heard it here first. Yeah. If that's not an actual, if that's not an actual source, exclusive. We'll say it's an exclusive.
There's the headline sorted for the video. Anyway.
Abramovich.
It's not this Norwich goalkeeper situation, is it, Aaron? We're not going down that avenue.
Once I finish this point, I'll double check. But Abramovich isn't scared to sack managers. So I think you're right. I think Lampard's obviously being given a bit of leeway, but if they're well away from that Champions League run, there's going to be a time where they're going to go, no, we're going to have to remove you. And I don't think it'll hurt his legacy that much. I think as a player, it'll be untouchable, but I think there might be a little jot on it.
I mentioned there just before, Chelsea have spent over 200 million in the summer. They brought in players such as Kai Havertz, Timo Werner, who in truth have had a rotten time of it so far. I actually felt sorry for Werner last night when he put the ball in the net and Shard Massey's flag went up, but rightly, it was very tight. But do you think, Devon, that a better manager will be getting more out of their new recruits, or have the new players simply not been up to it? Or is it a bit of both?
It's probably a bit of both. I think the common denominator is that just Lampard just doesn't know his best 11. And obviously last year he put trust in youngsters and the squad that he had last year, and he was ultimately producing some pretty good stuff at times. Obviously they had a couple of anomalies where it'd be this defeat there that would be like, oh, it's the end of Lampard, the end of the world. But overall, he did quite a good job. This year, he's got. I think it's been a bit like a kid in a sweet shop. He's kind of gone, oh, he's available. Let's get him. And they've kind of listened to paper talk and been like, just a bit overexcited in the transfer market. I think they needed another attacking body. But when they got Ziyech in, I thought probably someone that'll complement their style quite well. Again, make Tammy and Giroud that focal point and build around that with Mason Mount. And I think Pulisic is a very good player as well, obviously, albeit not being on form. But I think the reason why there's just an overchoice in attack, because they've got that many options. They chop and change it every time. I feel like Lampard's pretty much tactically inept. I feel like he needed a couple more years in a different role before coming into this Chelsea one, because his chance gone now. I don't think he'll get another chance if he gets sacked to manage Chelsea. And the only way that I can see him actually improving something is having that, actually just selecting his preferred 11 and giving them a run of 4 or 5 games just to play with each other and get familiar, because the amount of times that one positive will happen and it'll be another 3 changes, then another 4 changes, then another 2 changes. And no one's really been able to form any sort of chemistry with each other. They've just been, as Sam loves it when I use it, it's round pegs and square holes, and it's just not working.
Sam, Chelsea fans quite rightly have a lot of affection towards Frank Lampard because of what he did as a player. You know, we all grew up, and
he was all right, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's the thing. We can remember him for being fantastic as a player. But do you think that just needs to be put to one side now if they are to recover from this barren run?
But if Abramovich is going to sack Lampard, then you should probably do it now while there's no fans in the stadium, because I doubt, even though they're in a bad spot, that's for sure, I doubt Chelsea fans will react well to Lampard getting sacked, because he is he is such a huge legend at the club. But they've been so poor recently, especially away from home. The 2 goals they conceded against Leicester, falling asleep at a corner for Ndidi's goal, and the Maddison one is just a regular over the top pass from Albrighton. It's good thinking from him, but Reece James just completely falls asleep, leaves Maddison open, and it's an open finish for him. And only Newcastle have conceded more goals than Chelsea away from home since the start of last season, which just shows how poor they've been, and they need to get something out of their young attacking players as well. Werner and Havertz, who are clearly extremely low on confidence at the moment.
Not just that, I think it's Chelsea. Go on.
No, go on, Dave.
Good to Harry first, it's fine.
No, I was just going to say to Harry if he reckons Avram Grant is on speed dial.
Well, it would be smart of them to try and get someone at the end till the end of the season, because I know you said our Chelsea fans won't be happy. They're also not going to be. They're not going to be happy with the position they are on the table. You know, if Ricky Lambert was our manager, for example, and we're in our position, yes, I'd be annoyed. I'd be upset to see him go, but I'd also be like, well, there's a million other people that can come in and bring us up the table. For example, Sam, if Grimsby were struggling more, and they had to find.
Don't know if that's possible.
I try to think. If you were in their situation, then what would your feelings towards it be? Because you have a legend there, but you also want to improve.
Omar Both as the manager.
I'll be loving life if we're in exactly the same position as Chelsea, but it is a difficult one because all Chelsea fans' memories of Lampard would be him scoring it. Over 100 goals, all them great moments as a player. But like you say, they have to be real about the situation they're in. Is Lampard the one to turn it around? I'm not sure at this moment in time.
Devon, anything else to add on that?
I think it either Lampard has to be the casualty or the players need to take a hit and sacrifices need to be made despite the money spent. I think the last 15 minutes kind of personified where Chelsea are at. I think they was sluggish, and it looked like Leicester were actually the side that were 2-0 down with how much they were pressing Chelsea, got the ball, and even in possession they were more positive with it, whereas Chelsea were just sloppy. I mean, the links between Werner and Ziyech, how many times I saw Ziyech pass it into Werner lose it, and then Ziyech his arms would be just flailing everywhere because he'd be that annoyed. And I think there's a certain frustration between players, and I think there's just a mentality that the players are not playing for Lampard. I don't think they not care, but are not influenced how much of a legend he is at the club, because I think attitudes have changed. Whereas in the past, I mean, you had players like Brian Robson, which when he were at West Brom or when he were at Sheffield United, people looked up to him because of how much of a legend he was. And I think you'll get that even, but nowadays, I don't think that's an influence anymore. I think there's only really been Gerrard's influence at Rangers that's had a positive effect, but we know how challenging the SPL is at the minute. But you look at Pirlo's not had the same influence as he probably deserves with how good of a player he was, and Lampard's in the same boat. I don't think there's been that many players of recent times that have had this much had an influence on just because of the status. So if I were Abramovich, you've just got to pull the trigger and get rid and get someone in like Allegri that had sort out the whole situation.
Solskjaer doesn't agree.
Maybe Solskjaer. Even though you just look at Solskjaer's situation though, because the players, some of them have not shown him the respect that he deserves at all. There's always been a sense of players overpower the manager quite a bit there. I mean, Pogba's been doing it for years, so.
But then I do think it's a bit of both. You can respect someone as a player, but you can also go, well, what's your managerial credentials? Like at Derby, he did very average. Last season, he did good, but then, into this season, I think part of it was also due to the fact that he brought 1,000,005 players in and chucked them all straight into the deep end. And I don't want to bring everything back round to Southampton, but we had a decent season last year. We brought in some really solid players. I know Salisi's been injured, but like Diallo and like Walker-Peters. And you don't just chuck them straight in. If you've got a successful base of a squad that's doing well, you keep that squad, keep it going, blends the players in as you go. They're not going to know the system straight away. B, they're not going to know the league straight away. And give them 20, 30 minutes here or there to learn the league, learn the pace of the game, learn the physical needs of the game, and then put them in. I know it's a lot different because we spent £10 million on players and Chelsea spent £60 million on players. But it's all relative at the end of the day. And if there was a successful base that they had last season, why not keep going with that? And then when you think, Havertz is ready, Werner's ready, that's when you bring them in.
I feel like that's quite similar to what Wolves have been, because they didn't expect Jimenez to be out for the rest of the season, and they probably expected that Silva would be drip fed into the side. And Harry's bang on with these players that are adapting to life in England. I mean, I'm looking outside the window here, and it's completely different. Yeah. This is not the kind of things that they're expecting. Not just weather-wise, but I think it's just been the plethora's there. I think everyone wants to see results straight away, and football can be a patient wait game sometimes. And Lampard's got it completely wrong.
Well, it will be interesting by episode 20 next week to see if Lampard has survived that crisis meeting. But we shall see.
According to ex-West Ham employee who's very in the know, apparently that is happening. I don't know how much you trust that.
Yeah, I have heard of an ex-West Ham employee on Twitter, so we will see what the next few days bring.
Does he also know when the next Cobra meeting is for the COVID situation or not?
I don't think he's released that information, sadly.
We are now coming towards the end of this week's episode. We've still got Sam's quiz to come, but before we get on to that, we mentioned this at the start of the episode. Fantasy Premier League. It's still in the middle of a double
Just
game.
Jealous.
It's a very long double game.
I'm not speaking.
If you're not a player of fantasy football, the double game weeks are pretty big for the whole season. It's when several players play 2 games, and Sam's put his score up on the screen. Sam played his wild card this week, which is when you can make as many transfers as you like. And I've actually got a few details written down of Sam's team before we hand it over to him. So Sam had John Stones in his team, who, of course, scored 2 goals at the weekend. He's currently on 21 points. Ruben Diaz is on 11. Vladimir Coufal is on 12. James Maddison on 17. Mikel Antonio on 18. And Sam, at the time of recording, has still got Roberto Firmino, Fernandes, and Kevin De Bruyne, who is his captain, so double points. They are all still to play one more game. So as Sam showed, he's on 108 points. The average score for this game week so far is 50. So he's got over double the average score. It's frankly remarkable, Sam. And I'm dying to know.
He's losing his voice, though.
I'm dying to know what is your secret behind this.
I just saw that there was double game week coming up, and I thought, why not make the most of it? Get in a team full of players who are playing 2 games, and the whole Stones Diaz partnership that's come about. The home games that Man City had, I thought that those are guaranteed clean sheets. Mm-hmm. But I didn't expect 2 Stone goals and one of them to be assisted by Diaz, which is just. I've been insanely lucky, but I'll take it.
Well, yeah, some of the players you've got sitting there, the likes of Antonio, Maddison, Stones, they are players who people who haven't got them are now going to be wanting to get them in. So you've kind of beaten the curve there. So to be honest, you're sitting pretty moving forwards, and I'm a bit worried.
You're still top there, George.
I'm a bit worried about my lead, though, Sam. To be honest,
I need 1 or 2 more of those to catch up to you.
But in our little group in the BFM chat, we've got obviously the Invitational, which George will explain George, what's the code for our league?
The code for the league is HYADL. That's all lowercase with a number 3 on the end. HYADL 3.
And obviously that's a competitive outlet, but in our little group, it seems like there's just divisions in one division, because there's you two are battling it out for first and second. Me and JJ are there for third and fourth, and then Harry.
I'm absolutely nowhere to be seen. I'm absolutely nowhere to be seen. You know, I'm still above the average, but I need to set alarms. I need to set alarms. Yeah, I shouldn't. I slept through it, but I'll be back next week.
I'm annoyed I didn't qualify for the cup now, because I got like 20 points on the cup week and didn't qualify. So.
I wouldn't worry too much. The cup is not worth too much. The chances are very, very.
You never know.
You never know.
But so as we said, you've got the league code. It will be there in the description as well. So if you have a team, get involved and try and catch Sam up. I'm getting very worried about my lead at the top, I have to say. If it even still stands at this point, who knows? But finally now we will move on to the final part of the week. And I'll hand over to Sam for round 3 of his quiz. So Sam, over to you.
Yeah, I was struggling a little bit for a theme this week, but we've talked a lot about Premier League managers. Are they under pressure or not? So the quiz is on Premier League managers. It's not really a theme to the questions. They're a bit random, but they are about Premier League managers.
That's fine. We love random. Is it 5 questions?
It is 5, yes.
Okay.
There's
Ready,
bonus.
you are?
One or two bonus points.
Yep.
Okay. Question number 1. Which current Premier League manager has also managed Switzerland, UAE, and Finland?
Find me. There are a few names that came to my head then, to be honest. That's not to try and swerve people.
I've written one, came straight to my mind.
Here's who came to my head.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Right.
I bet Sam knows the answer to this as well.
This multiple choice, this one. Who was the first Premier League manager to have won the Premier League as a player? So we've got A, Martin O'Neill, B, Steve Bruce, C, Gordon Strachan, or D, Brian Robson.
Okay.
Good question.
That is a good question, actually.
Good question.
I have my answer.
Good question. Indeed.
When you're ready.
All right.
Okay.
Sam Allardyce, who's now at West Brom, has had the most Premier League jobs out of anyone. Can you tell me how many he has had?
Okay.
Is that
including West Brom?
Including West Brom.
Oh, hang on.
If I don't get this spot on, I'm going to be devastated. To be honest,
confident.
I'm going to be devastated.
Did he manage?
I think that's all of them.
He's had a few.
He has had a few, hasn't he? Blimey, that's a good question.
Is it not? Is it?
We don't need to list them all, do we? It's just a number.
You don't need to list them, no.
But Sam, please, can we? Because then I can catch up.
No.
I think I've just counted them out on my hand. I might have missed one, but
right.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay. Frank de Boer had an almost equally short stint at which club before taking over at Crystal Palace?
What, before?
Before.
It isn't a Premier. Or I don't know.
It's not.
But it's not a.
I can say it's not a Premier League club.
Sam, I like the quiz this week so far. This is going to come back and bite me in the arse very hard.
Because you're confident on the answers.
But so far, I'm a fan.
You lasted like 77 days.
Oh
at
no,
Palace,
was it
but it was like
was it before that actually, or did he go there?
85 days.
Do you know what? I'm gonna stick there.
That one is a complete guess because I can't really remember
Is it?
who he managed before.
No, it might be after actually.
Right.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm ready
Oh,
for 5.
no.
The other
Harry's
guys.
second guessing himself.
I shouldn't have said that now.
I'm good.
I'll start with it.
Question number 5.
Surely you wouldn't have won.
Which current Premier League manager has won the most Manager of the Month awards? And for a bonus point, how many have they won?
Bruno Fernandes. So.
How many have they won?
That'll probably be a guess, but that's why it's a bonus point. So you might.
Years has he been there then?
Because was he? I'm second guessing my thoughts now, Sam. For number 4.
Is he going to have really won that? I feel like the answer could be very obvious, but then is it obvious?
No, we got Klopp, Guardiola, Mourinho.
No, it must have been.
Allardyce has been around for a long time.
Allardyce? Surely not. It could be, I suppose.
Oh,
I've got an answer. I'm ready.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it's got to be Carlos Carvajal.
Okay, time for the answers. So number 1, which current Premier League manager has also managed Switzerland, UAE and Finland? Harry.
Well, I went for the main man, Roy Hodgson.
Devon.
I'm pretty sure that Roy Hodgson had a little gap here at some point from management, so I've just gone for Roy Hodge. Oh,
George has also got Roy.
As well.
And you're all correct.
Yes, it
is Roy.
There we go.
Yeah, it's also managed England, but I purposely omitted that because that would have made it extremely obvious, but you all got it anyway, so.
Yep.
There you go. So, number 2. Who was the first Premier League manager to have won the Premier League as a player? We'll go to Devon first.
See, the thing, the Premier League title, yeah.
The Premier League title as a player.
My thinking is that I think Brian Robson was still there, and he was there before Bruce when Man United won it the first year. So I've gone for.
It's gone for Brian Robson. Who's George got?
I've got.
Gone Steve Bruce.
Yeah, I went the same as George. I went Steve. Where's I write it? No, I didn't.
They were both.
Bruce.
I like the Strachan one though because they'd have been at Leeds when they won First Division the year before, so that could have been a bit of a.
Bruce and Robson were both in that United team that won the first Premier League.
Never mind.
Robson was the first to go into to get a manager's job in the Premier League, so it's Brian Robson.
Oh, I see. Oh, I didn't realize that was. I didn't realise that was part of it. Never mind. But
never mind.
Yeah, I forgot about that, and then I thought actually when you said, and then I remembered about the manager bit. I thought 2005, probably before Bruce. Well, 2003, I think he went in, didn't he? Or 4.
Yeah.
So yes, Robert.
Devon gets the point. So, how many Premier League jobs has Sam Allardyce had, including his current one at West Brom? George.
I've gone with.
Oh no, it might not be no. Oh no.
7.
He's gone 7. Harry.
I went 5.
He's gone 5. Devon.
I was umming and ahhing between 5 and 6, and I went with 5. Just because
5.
I feel like it is 7 now.
George was the closest, but he was one off. It's 8.
8?
Yes.
Who was I thinking then?
West Brom, Bolton, Newcastle, Blackburn, West Ham, Sunderland, Crystal Palace, Everton.
Oh, Everton was the one I didn't.
I
counted them out, and Everton was the one I didn't remember.
Why did I think 5?
That's so annoying.
That's right.
No
Did we have to be bang on, presumably?
You have to be bang on.
Look at him trying try and script.
Oh.
Someone asked me that question literally 2 days ago. I don't know. I didn't even count the teams because I was like, yeah, it's 5, so I don't even need to think about it. I'm a moron.
I'm like, did he manage Newcastle or Sunderland? And I thought, oh no, that's Bruce.
I'm a moron.
That's annoyed me, but good question. Carry on.
Good question.
Darn it.
So, Frank de Boer had an almost equally short stint at which club before taking over Crystal Palace, which obviously ended quite badly? We'll go to Devon first.
No. In my head, I'm thinking maybe it's a trick question and it's Ajax B team before he got a job at Ajax first team, something like that. So I just went randomly. Villarreal.
George, go on.
I didn't really have a clue, so I just went with the
Ajax. And
Yes.
Harry.
Inter Milan.
Inter Milan. And you are correct, Harry.
Yes.
Inter Milan.
There we go.
He did manage Ajax, but he was there for much longer than he was at Inter.
I only remember because Saints played him in the Europa League that year, and he wasn't there, and it was only in the group stage. So that really shows how short of a time he was at the club for.
I'm having a stinker here. Deary me.
I've only got 50%. So
how many have we got? We all tied at 2.
No, I think I've only got 1, haven't I?
Oh, that's
you got
true.
1.
Yeah.
I got 2.
You got 2. Harry's got 2.
2.
Right. So, final question. Which current Premier League managers won the most Manager of the Month awards, and how many have they won for a bonus point? We'll go Harry first.
I went Guardiola, and I just went with a random one, so I went number 8. Number 8.
Guardiola with 8.
Manager of the Month. That could be more.
George. Who
could be less.
got?
I think it's Jurgen Klopp, and I went with
14.
It was between those two.
Devon.
Did we not have this question on?
See, that's what I was thinking.
I thought maybe Mourinho as well, but
not bad shot.
I went for Sir Alex Ferguson with 8.
I thought he said current.
Yeah. Alex Ferguson does have the most by a mile, but he's not. He's not. As far as I'm aware, he's not managing anymore. So that's why.
Go on, kid. Carry on.
I'll wait till. Well, we know Devon hasn't got it right. But it was Jurgen Klopp. Klopp. Harry, you got the number correct, but obviously the wrong man. It was 8.
I thought it was in the double figures, to be honest. I'm glad I got it.
Mourinho's only won 4. I was looking. Carlo Ancelotti's won more than Mourinho. More Manager of the Month awards than Mourinho.
I'm devastated.
I thought it was surprising.
Do I get a point for 8 though?
I can't give.
He
You got the wrong man. You got the wrong.
I had to give it a go, George. So
at least we've got an iconic moment. That anyway. Devon had enough. He couldn't handle it. Okay, Sam, have we got total?
Harry is our winner of this week's quiz.
Oh, will I draw with George?
I thought it was 2 apiece.
I think everyone got 2.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Unless you want to give me 3, that's fine.
No, you have to get the first part right. You have to get the first one.
Harry's joint with George. George
and Devon.
Yeah,
actually, no.
I've got this.
Maybe I can get.
You're all on 2.
It's 2 apiece. Okay.
George is still ahead. You've got 8. Devon's got 6.
Now.
And Harry 5.
There we go. Then that's the end of this week's quiz, and that will, of course, be back next week, as we will be. But until then, please follow us on Twitter at @_Fourmation and on Facebook as well. You'll get all the info you need whenever we're uploading on there. Comment below something that you might have enjoyed in this video. I don't know. Just let us know. Get in touch. We enjoy reading your comments if we ever get any anyway. So, but we will see you next week. Thank you for watching. Will Lampard and Bruce still have their jobs by then? It remains to be seen. But yeah, thanks.
Will I have been replaced on the podcast for not listening?
We will see you next week. Cheerio.
Goodbye.